Hey guys, Dan Go at Hypnocafe podcast and magazine. Sorry about that. We got bounced off our broadcast there, but we're back live here on our page. And today we have Brian Town from Michigan Creative here in Lansing, one of the premier marketing companies in Michigan. And just so happy to have him. We're going to bring him on here in 3, 2, 1. Oh, there he is. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Dan, what's happening? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. As you can see, I'm not in the studio today. I wound up out on the road, but that's okay. We wanted to keep to our schedule, being every other Monday at 11:30. So had to stop broadcasting on YouTube today because I think that was our problem, guys. But we're live on our Facebook page. We'll upload this later to our YouTube channel, so everyone on YouTube can watch it there. So, and wanted to say thank you for Brian for coming in and talking with us. How is it going today, Brian?
Yeah, great, Dan. Happy to be here. Yep. It's great. It's great. Beautiful day here in Lansing and just getting after it on a Monday. Finally, I'm hoping that spring is here to stay, but we'll see. We had snow a little bit yesterday. So
What was that about? Yeah, I
yeah,
was
I know.
driving and I drove right into it. I'm like, and this
Yeah,
cannot be happening.
I know it.
But
Crazy.
it's
But yeah, it's good. Good things are
yeah,
good.
yeah. It's Michigan. It's April. What are you
Yeah.
gonna do?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and many of you don't know that Brian and I tried to work together years ago on when I was still running Firemind Productions, which I since have sold, as you guys know, to my old sound engineer Mike Bentley. So that production company continued on with him. And we won't talk about that because there was a whole lot of things that happened at that.
Always is something in it.
Yeah, I can laugh about it now,
Yeah.
but at the time there was all that stuff going on. But so let's get to it. Marketing. Brian is going to be coming out. He's going to be on our panel at the Michigan Hypnosis Conference. Actually, he's going to be pretty much the moderator of the panel for marketing, just because, and you probably see this in all small businesses, but we always say this as hypnotherapists. You get into a thing, you become a therapist, they teach you how to do it, and then there's like 4 hours of how to set up your business at the
Right.
end of the course. And you're just like, okay. And it took me, oh man, years to get marketing down. So I thought, you know what? Brian's the guy. So let's get into that. What are some of the big mistakes you see that when someone just like starts right out?
Yeah, and Dan, it's always something, right? And so, like as a solopreneur, or even as any entrepreneur, like your job, especially when we were starting off, and even today, like yeah, we have tons of employees, but there's always my wife's a business owner too, and there's always something that you need to be doing, and really the most of your day is spent working with customers and your employees and doing sales, which is great, which is all you should be doing. But marketing is a big piece. And so, at times when you're, a single, person business or even a couple person, like you have to also be the marketing director. And it's a little overwhelming because, you're trying to meet with customers and you're trying to do shows and you're trying to do all this. And you're like, that's what I have to do. When am I going to have time to market? Number one. And number two, I don't even know where to begin. So I think they just get overwhelmed. And the biggest mistake that I think the two biggest mistakes is one is they don't really do anything of any, with any purpose or plan, or they just don't, they do too much and none of it seems to be sticking. And so, the first thing that I usually tell people is the most important thing is to work on that message. And what we call is that message of finally. So like, the idea is that somebody sees your perfect customer see, which we can talk about that too, but your perfect customer sees a quick Facebook ad or a flyer, and what would it have to say to get them to go, finally, I've been looking for something like this for a long time. And it works because it happens to all of us. How much crap do you guys buy on Amazon that you've seen on Instagram that was targeted specifically to you, and you're like, I need that, right? And so I think that's the first thing is really figure out, what is that message? What is the message that you want somebody to get when they can go, I've got to go see this, or I want to work with this person, or I want to buy this. And then secondarily, I think almost equally as important is, who is it? If you're saying right now that your customer is everyone, then you got to start over. Um, is you really, it could be that lots of people enjoy what you do and lots of people want to be there, but I think that is a tough person to market to. Everybody is a tough person to market to because everybody is not on the
Yeah.
same, right? And so I would say find out who your perfect customer is, and you already know because you have
Mhm.
them. You've had them. If you've been in business for any period of time, you've got customers that really, really love what you do, and then you need to find out how you duplicate that person and who are they? Are they male? Are they female? How old are they? How many kids do they have? What do they read? What social media are they on? What's important to them? And I think that's a really those 2 steps, a lot of people just skip. They just go out and do marketing with no succinct message or idea of who. That's usually what I start with when I'm doing presentations.
So yeah, absolutely. When I first started out, I was a general hypnotist, so I marketed to everybody. Right? You got anxiety, you want to stop smoking, you want to lose weight, da 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 da. Uh, Recently, after we incorporated, and that's a whole other story, I narrowed my focus down to first responders. That's what
Good.
I am, semi-retired, and I narrowed it down to just those guys because they seem to be the most prevalent client that I was getting. So I'm just like, you know what? I've got all this other stuff going on. I really don't have time to be out here and I can't market to everyone. Um, I was just, man, let me just focus down on this. My next question is bad marketing.
Yeah.
I got involved in the beta of GoDaddy. GoDaddy was going to do all this marketing. And I thought, okay, well, it's a beta thing. And they said, we're going to give it to you because you've been a long time customer for this low price. And I thought about it. I'm like, okay, I went with it. And they asked me what I did. And I said, well, I focus on um, stress, anxiety, so on and so forth. And they kept coming back around to stop smoking. Everything that they did kept coming back around. It was like 3 or 4 conversations with them. And I think I stayed in that beta a little longer than I should have. So, what are some tips that you can say, like right away, this company is not getting your brand, get out?
Yeah, I would ask him, the first sign is that if it's really, really cheap, it's probably
Mhm.
not gonna work. And so some of these bigger companies like GoDaddy and, a lot of the, bigger newspapers and stuff, they're doing it, but they're outsourcing all of it. And so, if there's guaranteed results at a very low price, it's not true. So that's the first sign is not that you have to spend a ton of money, but, just be very careful about that. And then, I would really start to ask him those 2 questions is what is that message that you're gonna put out there? And then who are we trying to attract? And then ask, like, from this effort, what do you think is gonna be the number of customers that I'll get as leads? Like, how many leads do you think I'm gonna get from this? Or qualified appointments, it's up to you to close the sale, but, ask them how many qualified leads do you think I'll get in a given period of time? And that's usually a month. And so, those are the kind of things that I'd really, really ask them. And then also, if it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Now I know that you guys have a good clientele because I looked at the website years ago, and I'm like, oh man, these guys have really good reviews, and that's because you get to know your client, the people that you're working with. You know what I mean? It's like, and I can give an example. I started years ago working with a young lady, Melissa Sullivan, had a company much like what you do, but on a much smaller scale here in Michigan, and we started working together. And as the years went by, when we developed the new website for the conference, we sat down for 10 minutes, talked, and she just put it together. So I'd like to talk about that for a little bit because it is so important to know your client, not to the big corporate world out there for marketing, but just like, hey, this is our company and this is what we do. So I think that you guys have a better bead on your clients than some, you know, huge company per
Yeah,
se.
and we've got
Yeah.
yeah, and we've got some really good long-term relationships that we've had, so people can call us and we kinda already know what they need. And I think that's why, like, especially for smaller companies, is finding somebody that's that has a small agency,
Mhm.
that really has time to work with you one on one. That's that's the biggest thing I think when we get customers from other agencies or whatever, some things that they're afraid of. The things that we commonly hear is not that their design is bad or that their creativity is not good or the video didn't turn out like we want. It's they're not communicating with us anymore, or it's very difficult to get a hold of someone. And that
Yeah.
happens. I mean, that happens often. And so, it took me a while to kind of figure this out too, is that, our most important people, like, yes, our creatives are important. We need to have, make sure that they're technically savvy and they're very good at what they do, of course. But, our frontline workers, like the project managers and account managers, that's the lifeblood of our company. They're the ones that are talking to the customers day in, day out, putting out fires, just letting them know where we're at. And so that piece is very important is, when you're interviewing agencies, ask them, who am I going to be working with, and what does our ongoing communication look like? Because, you know, just asking those questions. I think also too, what is required of me? And that's something that we've done a pretty good job um, on our side is like, yes, we can do a lot of this stuff for you, but it's your business. You've got to be available and help us do things. Like if we need help, like, hey, I don't really understand this piece of your service.
Mhm.
I can do my research, but I need you to type me up a paragraph so that we can at least get started. So, make sure that that, agencies can do stuff for you without you, but they love it when you're involved, because, that's the true partnership is when, the client and the customer are kind of working together to get things done.
So, yeah, I have the same thing. I always tell my clients, like, I'm in your corner. I'm going to be invested in you, but you've got to be invested in me as,
Yeah.
because we're working as a team and a therapist. And it took me quite a while to really get my branding down to where I wanted to be. So, and I wish I would have had some shortcuts there to go like, this
Yeah,
is
I
bad and
know.
that's so. Um, when you see somebody doing what are some of the bad branding things that you see out there and you just go, "Oh, dude."
Yeah, all the time, and this is an easy answer because I see it time in and time ago, and it's not necessarily time and time again. It's not bad necessarily, but the biggest thing, and you'll be surprised too, Dan, like the biggest companies that we've gone into, we were with a $50 million company, and their brand and logo looked different across everything. The fonts, no idea what the font was, no idea what the colors
Oh,
were. It was all over the place, and just the idea of a simple brand standard guide and is something that if you're going to make a new brand and a new logo, make sure that you have a brand standard guide. It doesn't have to be this huge 100-page document, but just
mhm,
simply a brand standard guide of what your acceptable colors are with the numbers so that you know what colors to use. The fonts, make sure you have the fonts, and then make sure that you have the original files, so
yeah,
that you can then give the appropriate files to whoever you need. So really the biggest mistake is that your logo doesn't look the same all across the board. So like you go to the website, you see the logo, great. You go to social media, it's different. You go to
mhm,
a video, it's different. You go to a flyer, it's different. And sometimes that's not even the designer's fault. Like sometimes the designer will make a bunch of stuff and even a brand guide and they don't follow it. And so if you're going to spend and invest in making your brand, make sure that you have all those files in a brand standard guide. And also, we've seen it where brands don't really reflect what they truly are and what they truly do. So make sure when you're doing that, you're involving other people and involving your customers to ask them what's important, and what
mhm,
does your brand mean. Because then, the idea here is that you're trying to create a symbol, that people see and they understand. My favorite line is that your brand, is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And so,
exactly.
yep. So that should stand without you. Your brand should be, somebody should see it and understand what it means. And so, take your time, don't go just by what you like and the things that, that's important. I think that needs to have a piece. Your brand needs to be part of you, that's for sure. But also you've got to understand your customers and you got to understand what people will resonate with. And then just make sure it's streamlined and that brand standard guide. should be something that if you're making a logo and a brand, somebody's making it for you, that should be part of the quote.
So excellent. Yeah, we came up with the Hypnocafe. I was in the Navy, of course, and having the chance to be in Europe. In my head, you always sit at a cafe. If you sit there long enough, I had an old gentleman tell me, if you sit at a cafe long enough, you'll watch the world walk by. And so when we brought out the magazine, that was our brand. What's brewing in the world of hypnosis?
Yeah.
So we, as you can see it up there in the corner, we just went with the coffee symbol, and it took a minute, but people are starting to recognize it. At when we were first live at one of the things, I've got a big backdrop. It's got coffee beans on it. It says Hypno Cafe. They were like, "Where's the coffee?" And they walked right by the cameras. So I
Yeah.
understand
Yeah,
what you
that's great.
mean now.
Yeah, yeah.
But I thought it would be a great idea, but I stuck with the brand and I
Yeah,
kind of
no, it's
built
great.
it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but the worst thing was, and I think that you and I talked about this. Let's talk about this for a minute. Like you're branding an event, and I know if you've been involved with those, I came up with the cool name. I thought it would be cool, something people would remember, which was my Hypno Conference, MI for Michigan. But all they got was like, "So it's your conference?" They
Yeah,
thought
it's fine.
my
Yeah,
conference.
yeah.
So yeah, what are some tips and tricks that you can like somebody's gonna start an event or they're gonna start a company, what kind of things advice do you give them? It's like, "Hey, if you're gonna name it, this is what you want to avoid and this is what you wanna do."
Yeah, I would say 2 things, make it so think about let go, conference is over. Take yourself to this time as conference is over. People are walking out and you're starting to hear them say, "Man, this was really good, and this is what I got from this, and this is what I expected, and this is what it was, and I'm so glad I came." Those are the kind of things that I want you to think in your head. Like if you were able to build a perfect conference, what would those things be, and why would they say that? And then the other piece is what's going to get people to go there. So again, I'm
Yeah.
going to, start again is think about who you want to attract, um,
Mhm.
to come to that conference. And, the thing with conferences are always like, all right, am I going to take this time out of my family and spend this money and travel and go to this? And I'm
Yeah.
not sure if I'm really going to get what I need. So when you're building that conference, really think about what is it that they need? What are the things that they need that if they got one thing from it, what is it? And if you can somehow get that in the title of the event so somebody can see it and go, that's what I needed. And then I think the idea is to really think about your audience. And we don't do that. We try to come up with something catchy and fun, which is good. You can do that too. You should do that. I think that's important. But start with the audience and figure out
Yeah.
what is it? What are and Dan, if you think about marketing since way back whenever, our first marketing is that, even the Super Bowl commercials today, they don't talk about the product. They talk about what life could be like for you if you use said product, right? And
Right.
so you got to figure out what their pains are, what their life help them paint a picture is. If you go to this conference, here's what we're going to solve for you. And they're going to go, man, I need someone to solve this for me. So I would always start there and don't overthink it. I think the idea is somebody's not going to choose to go to your conference based on the name. I mean, it's, that might be a good way to get people in, but if they like the name and you catch them, then they're going to dig in a little bit more and find out. So I wouldn't put too much on it.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody liked the name, so we just went with Michigan Hypnosis Conference. We,
Yep. Good.
that's what it is, plain and simple.
I like it.
Just went with it. Yeah. Um, but and then I think I started with a DBA in my office, in my house, and then got into the other portion, which was the professional office, and then I got into the big office I'm in now, except I'm out on the road today. So and then went into the partnership, that LLC.
Yep.
That's when you kind of are making that transition from being a sole proprietor to, okay, now we're kind of rolling at least in my head, we're making that jump. So is there anything that if someone's like going to make that jump from, okay, I'm a sole proprietor, I'm just doing this as a side hustle, but now I'm going all in, are there some ideas that they should have or some thoughts that they should have just prior to that for setting up that quote unquote change?
Yeah. So this is more of a business discussion than marketing, which
Mhm.
is great because that's what I love talking about, just especially being in business and making the mistakes that I've done. Is yeah, I think, the biggest thing is I think two things. One, how where are your sales going to come from and how are you going to do sales every single day? And if I were to say what's the only thing that matters is how are you going to do sales? Like, how are you going to make money? Because while we say money's not everything in business, it is. If you don't have it
Yeah.
and it's not coming in, you don't have a business. I mean, it's just black and white as that, right? And the statistics aren't good, Dan. They're within 5 years. I think it's something like 90% of the companies that start fail, and then after the next five, 70% of those fail. So it's not a good if I was a betting man, I wouldn't make that bet, but here I did. And so, right? So, but it can be done. And it is done and it's all possible. And so I think focusing on that marketing and sales, how are you going to continuously spend time on getting sales? And that's going
Yes.
to be knocking on doors and making phone calls and doing marketing. So I think that is the piece. And then second is how are you going to schedule your time? Because as an entrepreneur, I don't care how small or big you are. We talk about this all the time with my wife is that it never ends. Like
Yeah.
there's always something that you should be doing and there's always something that you shouldn't be doing. And so, you know, blocking your calendar to get those shoulds done. And then sometimes there's shit that you just have to do, right? You have to do
Yeah.
stuff and whatever, and it's not fun. But until you get, an assistant or you get an employee or whatever. So really using time and blocking your time to do certain things. Like, I can't tell you the freedom of, when you have, a lot of stuff to do and you've blocked a time every week or a couple times a week to say, here's the three things I'm going to get done during this time. I know it's coming at 2 o'clock. I know that I'm going to get those three things done so I can take it off my brain. And I can know that those are going to get done during and you're focused. Otherwise, it's going to be mass chaos from email to text to phone, and you're going to feel like, and we've said this to ourselves 100 times, we're going to feel like we had a really busy day but didn't get anything accomplished.
Yeah. Been there, done that. Um,
So time blocking is key. And I would put on 3 or 4 time blocks of 50 minutes, maybe even some 20-minute ones, and just block it out. And then Sundays, however your week works, go through there and start putting in notes in each of those time blocks to get things done on your to-do list, knowing that that way you at least have time for chaos,
mhm.
knowing that you have time blocks to get the real work done.
So yeah, because it got pretty chaotic towards the end. Because I had Holtnick Hypnosis Therapy Studios, and then we had Firemind Productions, which kind of got started by accident between Mike and I, and that was just me trying to get a stage hypnosis show because nobody wanted to hire Dan Goyette, stage hypnotist,
Yeah.
but everybody wanted to talk to Daniel Jameson from Firemind Productions. And then of course weddings, and it grew out too much, but and it was two companies that I was separated between. So at that point, we really had to make a decision during the pandemic, and I just stepped 100% back into the therapist office.
Yeah, great.
And yeah, Mike took that over. And if you look at my board at the office, you'd be so proud. I
Very
actually,
scheduled.
yeah, I do. I have that. I was like, okay, from 9 o'clock to da 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 da. As we used to say in the military, what's the plan of the day?
Yeah.
So it was pretty broken down, and
Yeah, the
I
other
think
one is if everything's important, nothing is.
so.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, the three things are always important to us, and those three things always start. One of them is coffee. Always starts with coffee in the morning. It's like I got to get to the office. I got to make the coffee. That's what I got to do first off before I can do anything
Yeah.
else. So, and lastly, before because I want to appreciate your time taking it out for today to be on the podcast, and really appreciate you coming up and doing this at the conference. A lot of people are looking forward to it. I know, I think Robert, I can't think of his last name, but he works with the state Chamber of Commerce there in Lansing.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, I said, "Hey, Brian's gonna be there," and he goes, "Oh man," he got really excited.
Oh,
So
good.
yeah, I think he's gonna also be on the marketing panel there,
Great.
2024 and beyond, and because there's a lot of questions. And I will tell you that within the scope of hypnotherapy, you're going to be surprised that so many of us are entrepreneurs and so many of us are trying to work towards that, but so many of us are not business people.
Yeah.
The minds aren't geared that way. So, tips and tricks to gear your mind before we go on being a better business person.
Yeah, I mean, that's the typical E-Myth, right? Is
Yeah.
if you've ever read E-Myth, that's what 100% of what you're talking about is that, I'm creative and I like video, so I'm gonna start a business in video,
Mhm.
that's the classic is but yeah, you're really good at that, but you shouldn't be doing that because you should be running the business. And so, the way I kind of look at it is what are the, really taking a look and when you start out, you have to be everything. And so the two pieces of advice I give, if it's just you, then you have to find different times to wear different hats. And so in the mornings, whatever your schedule is, you're, from 9 to 10, you're CEO. And from 10 to 10:30, you're an executive assistant. From 10:30 to 11:30, can't do that all the time, but put your
Right.
hat on so that at a certain block of time, you're the marketing director. Certain block of time, you're this. As you start to do that, that's going to really help you kind of focus because I think we try to do everything all at once, and then start to make a list of the things that you're good at. And if you're a true owner and a CEO, what you only things that you should be working on are sales and culture. I mean, those are the two things. If you're building a company, your job is to
Mhm.
bring in those high level sales and continue to do it, and then promote that business, and then working with your team on the culture of that. And so, start to think about those things that you're really not good at. And my coaches have always told me, what's your hourly rate as a CEO is the most expensive hourly rate, right?
Yeah.
And so whatever that rate is per hour, figure out what those tasks that are doing that shouldn't be at that rate, you know? What are $20 an hour? What are 10, $15 an hour jobs that you can slowly start as you start to get more income, start to then say, all right, cool. Now that I have time and now that I have a little extra income, I'm going to get somebody in here for 20 hours a week. And this is what she's going to do. And it's those tasks that one, you're not good at or shouldn't be doing, and two, that are not at your hourly rate. Because your hourly rate as a CEO is high.
So yeah, yeah. I tend to pay myself at least $2 or $3 million. No, I'm kidding.
Per yes, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Let
I
me know how you've done that.
so I did that. I was joking with the girls at the bank one day. I walked in. I said, "Yeah, I need to pull $1 million out of my account," and they're
Yeah,
like, "Dan, you don't have $1 million." I said, "Yes, but I identify as a millionaire."
yes, but I am, so just give it to me.
Exactly. But anyways, guys, I want to thank Brian for being here, taking
Thanks,
time
Dan.
out of his busy day to be here on the podcast and to come on out to the conference. So make sure that you come to the Michigan Hypnosis Conference, sit down, be in the panel, and get the great advice from Brian Town. So thank you, sir.
Great, thank you.
Already. And hey, guys, you know what? As you know me, I'm already reaching up there. I'm stopping the video. It's stopping right now. There it goes. I push stop.